Are you having a decent time today? Good. So the clappers really mean it, and the ones who said, I'm glad you're faking it for me just today. No, this is important. It's important because, and I'm glad we're ending with this session, Adam, not apes, because if you came from apes, not Adam, you're just a hairless ape, then that means we're just animals. Morality is meaningless. There's no God to whom I'm accountable because I'm just an evolved fish. I'm a really advanced fish. That's what my professors taught me. And there's no purpose in life. There's no relationship with God. There's no good way to explain how we got here, or why we're here, or where we're going. So all that goes away too. So what do you lose? Well, you lose it all. What do you gain by having a history in Adam? Well, Adam came from God, and that was thousands, not millions of years ago. And so that brings God right here. And he's right here in our recent past, recent world history. And as Paul said, he is not far from any one of us. All we need to do is reach out and say, Lord, I am sorry for sinning, and I trust you to save me from my sins. And he is right there when we say that prayer, or we just reach out to him. So that's one of our purposes, is to get ourselves encouraged with sort of some of the science that we've been talking about that really supports the not proves. I mean, proof is a tall order. We can do proofs, but usually we do those in the world of philosophy. Science, we're just building models and we're weighing things. So what's more likely and less likely? And so today we're going to look at what's more likely and less likely when it comes to the most persuasive argument for evolution in this next generation. How do I say that? Why do I say that? It's because a friend of mine named Dr. Dan Biddle, that's Biddle, he runs an apologetics ministry. Apologetics means defense of the faith. It's called Genesis Apologetics. He does basically what I do, and he runs it out of Sacramento. So I want to connect with Genesis Apologetics. He conducted a survey of hundreds of 20-something college-age kids. Do you believe in evolution, yes or no? If so, why? And he had like an online survey, and they could click why they believe in whatever they believe in. 99% said they do believe in evolution. And then he said, well, why? Is it, and he gave them options, multiple choice. Is it because of the fossils? Is it because of natural selection? Is it because of the ape man, human evolution? Is it because of dinosaurs? I mean, what is it? And the most respondents clicked on human evolution because they're shown these pictures of almost humans. Pictures of like they're human-ish, but they're also ape-ish. And those pictures that are in our textbooks persuade these kids, this next generation, that they came from apes, not from Adam. And then when they open the Bible, it doesn't have anything about this history of millions of years of apes evolving into humans or ape-like creatures, same thing. And so my question is this, and I'm going to try to answer it within the next 30 minutes. Is there some scientific evidence out there that demands that I tear these pages out of my Bible? Is the science so strong that I have to go, oh, I'm sorry, Bible, you got it all wrong. I'm not going to trust you anymore about me coming from Adam. So let's look at some of the fossils as we go through. And here's just a reminder of why this is important. Paul himself tied the whole gospel to our beginnings in Adam, saying, and quoting again, from Genesis 2, and so it is written, the first man, Adam, was made a living soul. The last Adam, that's who? The Lord Jesus, was made a life-giving spirit. So in other words, the first Adam was a real guy in the same way that Jesus was a real guy. And if Jesus wasn't a real guy, neither was the first real guy, and then where did we come from anyways? And we have people who are calling themselves evangelical Bible believers, and they're infiltrating our seminaries and they're trying to persuade the next generation of pastors, I'm sorry, but you have to believe in evolution because it's true, because the fossils demand that Adam was not a real person. And so you're going to have to reinterpret not just Genesis, but Paul. Boy, if you reinterpret Paul, then that means you could make any word mean whatever you want it to mean, and Paul wrote more than half of the New Testament. So guess what? Now man becomes the arbiter of what God is trying to say, instead of just letting God say what he wants to say. So that's what's at stake. Can we trust God's word, or do we have to say, no, we got to make it mean whatever else we want it to mean because the fossil evidence is so overwhelming? So let's look at some of these fossils. And we've got 4 little examples. That's all we'll have time for today, 4 fossil examples. I've got 5 listed there. The one on the right, modern man, that's us, you and me, so we don't need to get to the fossils of our great-grandparents, just the great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents. But we'll look at these 4 examples. And what we'll find, and so here's what I did. When I was challenged with this, it was a big deal. And I thought, you know what? If I'm going to go with Genesis, if I'm going to go with me coming from Adam and not apes, then what do I do with these fossils of ape men? You know, the ape men fossils. What do I do with them? And so I went through each one, and I did about a dozen. And I'm just giving you 4. And at the conclusion of my study of each one of these supposed ape men, I found that they all always fit into 3 categories, the same 3 categories. So we're going to look at 4 examples that fit into 3 categories, which means that 2 of them are going to fit into 1 category. Now, as we go through this, I'm going to use a little interactive system. This is called a golf ball. And so whenever you see the golf ball in the tee, I'm going to grab my golf ball, grab the tee underneath it, and I'm going to push it in the ground because we're going to tee it up. And so when I do this and you see that and I say this, I do this, then you're going to say tee it up, kind of like this. Tee it up. Perfect. Now, when we tee it up, we're going to talk about, for a minute, what was said about the fossil, what the evolutionary story says that gets wrapped around that particular ape-man fossil. And then we're going to look at the science, and we're going to see how the story differs from the observable data about that fossil. We're going to see how the story falls short, and at that point, I'm going to show a different icon, and it's a golf club hitting that ball. And so I'm going to swing my virtual golf club, and you're going to say, knock it out, like this. Knock it out. So we get to... Boy, that was random and haphazard. Okay, when I plunge the tee, we're going to say, tee it up. Okay, so the first one we're teeing it up, it's Ida. Everybody say Ida? Ida, the fossil. Boy, it's extraordinary find, they're saying. Extraordinary find. It's the missing link. We finally found a missing link. This is in the spring of 2009. And there's a picture of Ida, this amazing fossil. Is it our missing link? Because of this fossil, do we have to say, you know what, we came from this, and Genesis is all wrong about us coming from Adam? Do we have to do that because of this fossil? Well, according to these guys, it confirms what they already believe, and what I used to believe too, in evolution. The guy who stands to gain fame and funding and fortune said this about it. This little creature is going to show us our connection with the rest of all the mammals. And then this will be the one pictured in the textbooks for the next 100 years. Why? Because it's so fundamental. It's the missing link. By the way, it's not in the textbook today. Why? Why did Ida not even make it into the textbook once for 1 year, let alone for the next 100 years? Well, because the science got involved, and the actual observable scientists got involved, and they looked at the Ida fossil itself, and they started comparing it with living animals, and they found an exact match. So there's the Ida fossil legs below, and do you recognize the living animal that is an identical match to Ida? You see it, I see it at the Dallas Zoo. They have a little exhibit of these, and they're famous for leaping. It's a lemur. So Ida turned out to be a lemur, and so here's what happened. in October of that same year, 2009, controversial Ida, no missing link. That's not the missing link. You know what? You don't have to get a PhD in paleoanthropology to know that the hype that the media generates accompanying these finds is nothing more than hype. It's just wishful thinking. All you have to do is read. If you can just read a little bit, read the hype, and then wait a few months or a few years, and you'll read in the finer print, not the headlines, but the footlines sometimes. You'll read that, scientists now disagree. And in every case, every time, there's evolutionary scientists who put this thing on a pedestal and say, we came from this. And there's always another evolutionary scientist who says, no, we didn't. Because I want us to come from the thing that I found. So there's vying for this. So we get to knock it out. Very good. Bone crunching debunks. First monkey. It was fossil hype. It was just hype. Of course, we predicted that when we wrote it in our news article. Scientists are going to find that this has nothing to do with evolution, and scientists are going to disagree with those who say that we came from this creature, and our predictions came true because it happens every single time. So that's our first example. See, science is easy. This is fun. So our first example fits into the first category, which is animal. Okay, there's a dead lemur, guys. Does that mean I have to take scissors and chop up my Bible? Does that mean I have to say, Paul, you got it wrong? No, it's just a dead lemur. Lemurs died. Okay, moving on, right? Well, there's more. There's Lucy. Lucy is the nickname for the next one. But if you want to say the longer version, it would sound like Australopithecus. Or you don't have to say it at all. I can just say it myself. Australopithecus. So here it is pictured in the sixth grade public school, California public school textbook. There's the Lucy that your sixth graders learned about 5 years ago. And then, of course, they position it right next to this other fossil, Homo Habilis, and they position that right next to Homo sapiens, which is just you and me, and they show small, medium, large, as though there's an evolutionary progression. And they show slopey forehead, and then straight up and down forehead, or less slopey forehead. And so there's a progression there. And they line these up as though there's a evolution from one to the next over millions of years. Well, anyway, we're going to look at Lucy first, and then we'll look at the next one next. Lucy is really famous. It became famous in the mid-1970s as a missing link, okay? So we're going to tee it up. Here's what they said about Lucy when it came out in the 70s. And there's a model of Lucy that shows the light-colored bones are the bones that they filled in to make the skeleton complete. The darker colored bones are the ones that they actually found on the ground. Anyway, here's what they claim about Lucy. Lucy has that uniquely human lumbar curve. So that's your curved spine. And if you ever looked at the chimps in the zoo, they don't have this they don't have an S-shaped spine. They have a C-shaped spine. And then the claim is that Lucy has a human-like pelvis, which, by the way, pelvis bones, which mine are here, but anyway, they're angled in such a way that your femur connects to your hip bones, so that you can swing your leg straight back, straight forward, whenever you walk or jog or run. You have 3 gears: slow, medium, fast. Human-like knee, and you got to have that. To make that human-like knee work, in a human-like foot. So those are the claims. Lucy walked. It was an extinct ape-like creature, but it walked like a man. And it had all the anatomical features it needed to walk like a man. Well, recent studies are debunking this whole thing as a myth. Recent studies, like when scientists put markers on chimps and humans and watch the way they move when they walk. And so scientists have produced this video to show us what we look like when we walk. So humans have a uniquely human foot with an arch that goes from toe to heel, longitudinal arch, But we also have a lateral arch that goes from big toe to little toe. And so that double arch system in the soles of our feet gives us a spring in our step every time we step. Apes don't have that. They just have feet with a hinge in the middle of the foot. The next thing you'll notice in this video is that when humans walk, when you and I walk, like let's say I'm going to take a right step. So my right step forward, okay? Well, that brings my right hip forward, but my left shoulder, or my right shoulder goes actually the opposite direction. Okay, and what I'm doing is I'm building torque I'm loading the spring, okay? And so that when I take that next step, there's a spring action that propels me to the next step. That's humans. Chimps, not so much. When chimps walk, and other apes, they have their knees out. They can't stand up like this, so they're always hunched over. And then their shoulder moves with their hip. So they do, I'm exaggerating it, but they do something like this. This is fun. You guys should try this. Maybe we'll try this in a minute. What happened to my video? Oh, it just played once. Well, you know what? While this plays, let's do it. Everybody stand up. Stand up, stand up. You have to prove to me that you're an actual human. And in order to do that, now remember I said that when humans walk, we actually load our spine by sort of giving it a little bit of a twist. Chimps have a stable spine, and so that helps them for when they swing from tree branches. It helps them, it gives them a solid platform to swing from those tree branches. But our spines are more swivelly, and that's why we can run marathons and no animal can, for example. Okay, so to do this, you have to keep your feet, your toes aimed forward, but you're going to say hi to the person behind you without moving those feet. So give it a shot. Say hi, person behind you. Do the twist. Did you just do the twist? Woohoo! Hey, you're actually people! Yeah. Now you get to pretend like you're a chimp, and so you can't twist your spine, so what do you have to do to say hi to the person behind you? Show me. Yeah, you got to take those steps. You got to take those steps. You guys make a pretty lousy bunch of chimps. Have a seat. Good job. Excellent work. Thank you so much. All right, so we teed it up. We said, these are what they claim and claimed back then about Lucy, and some maintain these claims even to this day. Well, let's look at Lucy for real. First of all, they said Lucy has a curved spine, a curved lower lumbar spine, and look at what's not even there. The spine, those vertebrae aren't even there. Now, this is the epitome of bad science. Science is supposed to be based on that which you could see, describe, measure, touch, feel, taste, all that kind of thing. There's nothing there to even measure. So it's easy to make a claim about a creature if there's no way to back up that claim. The knee, supposed to be a human knee, well, it was found 200 deeper and 8,000 feet away. No wonder it's a human-like knee. It's a human knee. I'll say another thing that's not even on my list, but this hyoid bone here, they associated it with the rest of these skeletal elements, but a later analysis just a few years ago found that it's identical to like a mandrill, like a monkey. So they stuck a monkey hyoid bone is what helps you talk and helps them vocalize. Apes don't talk. Anyways, it had an ape-like ear canal. Okay, so let me try to explain this really quick. So with a human skull, not only do we walk upright, and chimps are like this, because they knuckle walk. They walk on these knuckles here. And so they have like a locking wrist. By the way, Lucy had a locking wrist and was a knuckle walker. And we can do this so that way we can manipulate objects and do all kinds of things with their hands that they can't do. But they use them for knuckle walking. And that means they're pretty much on all fours. They prefer to be on all fours. They can do this, but so can some dogs. It doesn't mean that they like doing that. But if their head was connected to their spine like ours is, so ours is designed to where we can stand straight up, stand tall. And this is uniquely human. So our spine comes into the bottom of our skull. And it articulates with this big hole in the bottom of our skull, and it's called the Foramen Magnum, which means big hole. That's all it is. And that's where your spinal cord goes up and connects to your brain so you can do everything. Now, in chimp skulls, the Foramen Magnum is in the back. It's in the back. Ours is in the bottom, theirs is in the back. Why? Because they're oriented like this. And if theirs was in the bottom like ours, they'd be craning their necks up all the time. Well, God didn't design them to where they had to crane their necks all the time. They're already facing forward naturally by design when they have that position in their foramen magnum in the back. Now, all that to say this. In humans, if the skull is oriented this way, we have the organs of balance oriented to where if your head is upright like this, then it's telling you all is good. You are in balance. And then when you do this, your head is telling you you're out of balance. You're now looking up. But for chimps, this is all is good. Okay, but it's not for us. Anyway, the organ of balance is rotated for chimps as it is in comparison to humans. Lucy had the ape orientation. If that makes no sense to you, don't worry. Just leapfrog that whole discussion. Okay, the pelvis, to make it look more human, was literally, and there's a video by Owen in the 80s showing Owen Lovejoy, a paleoanthropologist, using a Dremel tool to refashion the hips so that they'll make it more human-like. I can show you the video clip. Don't have time today. So the pelvis was adjusted to make it look more human. And look, they said it had human feet. Guess what? There are no bones of the feet either. But since then, we've discovered more examples of Australopithecines, several more. And we've found now hand bones and foot bones. And just like a chimp has this little thumb way down here, and not so that it can do this, like you can do this, chimps can't. So that's fun to do. But they can't because they have this little bitty thumb way down here out of the way of being able to grasp tree branches. And then they have hands for feet. And so the more recent examples of Australopithecines show that they had the same bone structure of hands for feet. That was Lucy. So that's the real Lucy. So you know what we get to do now? So we set it up. We said these are the claims they made about it. And now we're looking at the actual anatomy, showing that it's a combination of different bones from different animals. And the bones that we do have are all ape-like. Ape. So we get to do what with our club? Knock it out, baby. Let them knock it out. You don't have to take my word for it. I'm just a crazy creationist. Stern and Sussman, evolutionists all the way, 1983, way back then, they said, Lucy's kind would have walked bent hip, bent knee, rather like a chimpanzee. So we know what chimpanzees walk like that. Back then they knew that Lucy would have walked like that. And then this is a picture of a anatomically accurate and responsible Australopithecine, or Lucy, on display at the Creation Museum in Kentucky. Answers in Genesis, a different ministry, runs that, and they have that. And they just happen to have covered it with hair, but it matches the anatomy based on the bones. Okay, next one. We get to tee it up. Now, this one's a bonus one. It's not actually on my list of 4 examples, because this one is like a separate story. It's a story about footprints. And when scientists found these footprints in the 1970s in Africa, at Tanzania, they said, wow, these are in rock layers that that we, in our evolutionary concept, these are supposed to be before humans evolved. They're supposed to be before humans evolved. So humans couldn't have made these prints because humans had not yet evolved in our minds. That's the setup. So it's kind of like this. You're supposed to have, if evolution is true, humans at the upper layers, and then apes that we evolved from in the lower layers, and then transitional, almost becoming human forms are supposed to be in the in-between layers. So that's what we'd expect to see if evolution is true. And so, but what we found was what looked like a spitting image of human tracks down in those supposedly loosey layers. And they said this about those tracks back in, this is from the journal Nature. They published it. So I just clipped it out so you could see. The Laetoli Footprints show that the unique striding bipedal mode of locomotion employed by modern people had been established. So in other words, people were walking in the mud. But they couldn't have been people because people had not yet evolved in our minds. So you know what? We have to make them into walking apes. So at the same time as they found these footprints, they also found a Lucy which had no feet and no lumbar spine so that they could start telling a story that combines this skeleton with these tracks. Maybe this was the track maker, a walking ape. But it was all in their minds. Because more anatomy showed, hey, these are actually just human feet. So human feet, you could see, are very different. Apes have hands for feet, and there's the Laetoli track. It's like I grew up watching Sesame Street, and they would sing the song, "Which one of these is not like the other one?" You know, matching song. And so which one of these is not like the other one? Laetoli is not like the hands for feet. It's not like the ape feet. It's not an ape. It was a human feet. Well, even a more recent analysis of the same Laetoli tracks, they used fancy computer scanning. And here's what they concluded. Laetoli footprints preserve earliest direct evidence of human. They were human. So they have Laetoli track and a modern human, and it matches. Perfect match. So here's what we're going to do with the Laetoli tracks. I don't think that the Laetoli tracks were made by apes that walked exactly like people. Because in order to get an ape to walk like a people, you have to give that ape human feet, human hips, a human spine, and in fact, you have to make that ape a human. Then it'll make human tracks. That's what you got to do. So what do we have? We have human tracks way down in the loosey layers. So what we're going to do with Laetoli? Knock it out. We're going to yay. So you don't have to buy into the storytelling that it gets wrapped around the fossil or the track, or the fossil if it's a track. And so the story is that they tell us is that this is an ape that walked like a human, but since it's a human track, maybe it was a human that walked like a human. So there's science for you. Anyway, what that shows us though is that we have, and by the way, we've had Lucy examples discovered more recently, and they're in layers mixed with human remains. So look at this. Instead of having the neat, tidy evolutionary picture of our ancestor down here and the descendants up here, instead we have our supposed ancestor both down here and up here, and we've even discovered human remains, including the Laetoli tracks themselves and other bones, down here in what we used to think of as Lucy layers. And just last week, scientists found in Crete some human tracks that belong in layers that would be way down here, even below the Laetoli tracks. So there's human remains up here, there's human remains down there, and there's ape remains up here, and there's ape remains down here, and they're all mixed in between. And there's no picture of evolutionary story unless you cherry pick which fossils you want and you stick them on a pretty little chart in a pretty little textbook and tell a story about it. But the real world is different. The real world has all these fossils mixed up in all these different rock layers. Let's do another bonus one. It comes from the fourth metatarsal. So that's the bone that connects to your pinky toe. One person's paying attention. Man, I'm not talking good today. You talk bad. Okay, let's tee it up. Yeah, let's tee it up. So that's the picture of the bone published in the journal Science, and I think it was 2010, and I was reading the journal article, and boy, it was fun to read. Anyway, they found it down in those Lucy layers, but it looks pretty human. And so they were like, where did this foot fossil come from? Like, what creature left this behind? And so they did these analyses, and let me just describe the analyses really briefly. They measured all the angles that they could with this one little foot bone. It's right here, the left fourth metatarsal. And they measured the diameter to the ratio of the this and the twist and the torsion and the bend and all these different angles that they measured. And in every case, 6 different measurements, it came out. Well, here's the graph that shows the result. So pan-troglodytes is the scientific name for chimpanzee. Now, this is really tricky, but the scientific name for gorilla is gorilla. And then Homo sapiens, scientific name for you and me. And so this is the range of values that we get from modern chimps, modern gorillas, modern people. And then here's our mystery fossil. And now which one of those 3 does it line up with? Modern people. So it's a human. It looks just like a human. It falls right within the range of human for the twist angle of that particular. And they did 6 other measurements, same result. And I thought, what are they going to say about this obviously human foot fossil? And they said all these analyses, and then they said in the very last paragraph, we conclude, therefore, that an unknown ape had human feet. And I started walking through the halls of ICR just kind of going, an ape with human feet? Where's the evidence of any ape? It's a human foot bone, maybe because it's from a human foot. I mean, I don't know. I'm no genius here. And, of course, I'm walking around the hallways just laughing and crying and doing all the different things I do. And people are peering out, shutting their doors and to their offices. There goes Brian again. So what did we forgot to do this? We're gonna knock it out because it's just a human foot bone. So because someone found a human foot bone, that means a person died. Do I have to take an X-Acto knife and chop out the words of Paul in Corinthians because some human died? No, it's just a dead person. At least their foot bone. Same with this guy. This guy died, and he died. And they discovered his skeleton. They named it OH1 for Olduvai hominid 1. Same place in Tanzania as the Lucy was discovered. But they discovered this in 1913, and it's down in the Lucy layers. And they said, well, this is in the wrong layer. Humans had not yet evolved by the time this guy laid down, was buried there. So you know what they said about it? Oh, it must have washed in from above and ensconced itself down in these Lucy layers in the intervening millions of years. How convenient that it washed itself down where it's not supposed to be. Anyway, that's a story on its own right. The story that we tell in the book that I'm about to tell you about, I think. Anyway, it's Contested Bones, if you want to hear more about that. So anyway, here is what I call on the top the fake parade. This fake parade of apes becoming human. Garbage. The science does not show that. The fossils just show what you see on the bottom. You might see a lemur down there. You might see a lemur alive today. You might see an ape down there. You might see an ape alive today, and in any layer in between. Same with humans. Human remains down there. Humans are still alive today. And so anyway, the fake parade is fake, but it's so persuasive as an icon that this next generation is taking their scissors to the Bible and saying, the Bible is a bunch of trash because science has proven that we came from apes. And I'm saying, wait, what science? And there's this big box labeled human evolution, scientific proof that Genesis is wrong and we came from apes. And I started opening the lid to the box, and I picked out the popcorn. And I want to find this evidence, that humans came from apes. And I'm pulling out the popcorn. And I end up with an empty box, and there's no evidence in there. Every time I look at one of these supposed ape-men fossils, I end up with, it's either a dead animal or, next category, a dead person. So anyway, he says this about Lucy, they are just apes. Oh, I agree, and I'll take your word for it. So Lucy is our second example that fits the same category, animal. It's a dead animal. So animals died, and that's okay. The next category is going to be different. It's going to be dead people. And to illustrate that, we're going to look at Homo Habilis really quickly. But before I do that, I have a third bonus venture. And this may be the most important. It has to do with artistry. So there's these people called Paleo Artists, and what they do is they take a skeleton or a bone or a partial skeleton, and they put flesh on it, and they make it come to life. So I took a picture of a Lucy on display in Denver, and there's our Lucy. Isn't that creepy?
Looks like from a movie.
Looks like Planet of the Apes.
Yes.
More of that creepy stuff. So the eyes are really important. And so do eyes fossilize, class? Not really. I mean, there's fossil retina, but you don't get the whole eyeball. And so you don't get the whole eyeball, and yet there's something unique about human eyes that no animal has. And that's, you have uniquely human eyes. So actually, let's just talk about that real quick. Who can I pick on? Okay. Who are you pointing at, sir? Why are you pointing at her?
She has beautiful eyes.
Ah, because I'm looking at you even though my face is facing you.
He's the one.
So my point being, my point, not your point. He's pointing at her. My point being, we can communicate things with just our eyes, the direction that our eyes turn. And you know I'm looking at you, or her, I guess, because of my eyes. But you could see because I have the whites of my eyes. A lot of the sclera, the whites of our eyes, are visible. But for animals, the whites of their eyes take up much less visible space. In other words, their sclera is back behind the skull for the most part. So when an ape looks at you, its whole head turns. When a dog is looking at you, its whole head turns. Baboon, its whole head turns. And it focuses where its face is looking. But for us, we can focus over there, or we can focus over there, and we don't have to move our head at all. So that's uniquely human. We can also communicate like this. Mom. The old rolling of the eyes trick. No animal does that. We can communicate all kinds of subtle information, interpersonal connection with our human eyes. And so it's a crime, I think, for these artists to stick human eyes into ape skulls, but that's what they've done. So on the left, we have a reconstruction of an actual human, and then there's a gal reconstructed from actual human bones, and they put human eyes in a human skull, but they gave her kind of a ape-like nose, which I don't appreciate, doesn't need that. And by the way, who knows what they did their hair with? They could have used mousse back then, we don't know. Do they still have mousse today, or is that from the 80s? Okay, and then you've got this white box around this gorilla-like skull with human eyes. It was like Planet of the Apes type stuff. And then on the right, I had to get a picture somewhere else of an actual gorilla. And you could see those animal eyes where the sclera are hidden behind the skull. Okay, so so if I were to interview the artist and say, why did you put human eyes into that ape-like skull? A responsible artist would say, well, we found these fossils and it showed human eyes were in this ape-like skull. Or the data demanded, something like that. It's not what he said. He said, I wanted. That's why you have it. Because I wanted to do it this way. I wanted to put a human soul into this ape-like face to indicate evolution. In other words, he's trying to persuade you and our next generation, believe you came from apes, not Adam. See, look, I'll make a picture that illustrates this. So we have the fake parade, and now we have fake eyeballs, and that's not good science. It's bad science, but it's persuasive. So it's up to us to discern the good science from the bad, and to categorize these apes as they come in the news. Ape-like, human-like, which one is it? Let's decide. Wait for the experts, because they'll come out and tell you eventually. For example, Homo Habilis. Let's tee it up. Okay, fine, we will. Homo habilis is a wastebasket term. It undergoes constant name changing. I'm holding a model of K&M ER 1470, and it's got hundreds of fragments. But basically, Homo habilis says this guy. Don't take my word for it. I'm just a crazy creationist. Take this guy, National Museum of Kenya. Homo habilis never gave rise to Homo erectus. And by the way, that's the evolutionary story, so I should have teed it up better. I should have teed it up by saying, by saying that also, but by saying the story that we're told and I grew up hearing is that Homo habilis is the missing link. It's the most important connection between modern humans and ape-like ancestors. And so if you remove Homo habilis, then you really just have apes and humans separate. And so this evolutionist says these discoveries have completely changed the story. Homo habilis really doesn't belong in our ancestry at all. Why not? Well, what discoveries? Habilis skull up with human skulls in recent rocks in Kenya. So how can you descend from a great-great-great-great-great-great-granddaddy who was alive when you were alive? In other words, how can you descend from an ancestor that was your contemporary? Okay, so the human evolution story is based on bad data. So better data shows that Homo habilis is just an all-embracing wastebasket species. A whole variety of fossils are swept into this term. These guys say it this way: although the transition from Australopithecus, that's ape, to Homo, that's us, is usually thought of as a momentous transformation. And by the way, it would be, because you'd have to change the arches of the feet, you'd have to change the hips, you have to change the knees, you'd have to change the arch in the back, you'd have to change the Foramen Magnum position, you'd have to change the inner ear, you'd have to shorten the arms, you'd have to change the shoulder girdle so that you can have a stable platform for only humans can throw like a baseball, and chimps do this. You'd have to change the positioning of the toes, the thumbs. You'd have to change every anatomical feature on this creature in order to change it into a human. Definitely momentous. Nevertheless, the fossil record bearing on that story is virtually undocumented. This is way back in 2017. They're saying there is no evidence in the fossils for humans having evolved from Australopithecus. So there goes erectus. So we can say that that's another category, ape plus men. So the first category was dead what? Dead animal. Ida was a dead lemur, it's a dead animal. Lucy was a dead ape, that's a dead animal. So now we have Homo habilis, which is a mixture of ape parts mixed with human parts. I didn't really demonstrate that very well, but working on it here. It's a wastebasket term. It's not a real thing. It's just an imaginary category that they have invented, where they say this is our evolutionary past, Homo erectus, and they put a name on it, and the name almost makes it sound real. But what is it really? It's just a wastebasket group into which you can put any number of different kinds of human or ape fossils. Don't take my word for it, just listen to these experts. They're the ones who said it. They're the ones who believe this stuff despite the evidence. Okay, and then we have our last example. It's Neanderthal Man, so hey, let's do that. This is how I was taught and told. You came from a Neanderthal ancestor, which was brutish and club-bearing and dumb, because it was on its way to become human, getting smarter through the millennia. And actually, it's the opposite. We're getting dumber. Adam was created with perfect genes, perfect brain. And we've been accumulating mutations ever since. Studies of intelligence are finally catching up and showing that, on average, mankind we have slower reaction times now than we did a couple hundred years ago. We're doing the same tests, and we have slower cognition. Accumulation of mutations. We're getting dumber. Not smarter, but that's a different story. Our only hope is in the Lord. Neanderthal Man, that's what I was told. And so I found the Time Life book that I read when I was a little kid that I believed, because it was all I was ever taught. You came from, ape-like people. And so I came from Neanderthal. Well, since I was a kid, and even back then, but more evidence has accumulated that Neanderthals were not ape-like in any way. They were just humans in every way. Let's skip to this one. I think I have this slide in here to show you that we have news articles that come out all the time, and they're free. So if you ever have, a headline that comes across your feed, do you have feeds? I don't have feeds yet, but some people have these things called feeds. Like my wife, she's like, oh, look at that. She's swiping through her feed. I don't know what this stuff means, but I'm trying to catch up. And she'll find a headline and it'll say, new human ancestor, blah, blah, blah. And if you have a question about it, give us a shot, give us a chance. Go to icr.org and you'll probably end up finding an answer to that challenge to Genesis, because that's what we do for a living. And so anyway, we have that. But we know this about Neanderthal, shared 99% of its DNA with modern human sequence, so it had human DNA. And a lot of the difference there might be differences that have occurred since the Neanderthal human died. In other words, accidental DNA damage that occurs after death. Okay, they married modern-looking anatomy humans, because you have Neanderthal features along with modern-looking features, same burial, same time, same cave. They lived in cave. They purposefully buried their dead. No animal does that. They cooked food. They had jewelry. They even had like little purses. They buried the dead. They had instruments, musical instruments, bone flutes and whatnot. And anyway, so they were people all the way. That's Neanderthal. And so they just had unique features. That's okay. Do you have unique features? Yeah, I have unique features. In fact, half of my features are Neanderthal. Look at this sloping forehead. But that doesn't mean that doesn't mean I'm dumb. I mean, I'm pretty dumb, but it's not the slope of your forehead that gives you intelligence. It's the wiring diagram of your brain. And so you can have a small brain or a big brain, and you're still just as much a person. A person's a person no matter how small. Anyway, I took this picture of a Neanderthal model. It's on display in Chicago at the Field Museum. And I was walking through the display, and there was a 10-year-old girl in front of me, and we both rounded the corner at about the same time, and boom, there's this guy in a grass skirt in a glass box, and he's staring at you, and he's got his arms crossed. And she was like, oh, what is this? Because it takes you a minute to realize that's not real, right? I mean, you're expecting him to kind of go, what's up, little girl? Any second. But so she's got a notepad there, and I was like looking at the Neanderthal, and I looked at her, and she's doing something for school or something. And I said, just talking to her at random, and so she kind of looks at me, and if you gave that guy a shave, a haircut, and put a suit on him, and had him walking around the streets of Chicago, which is very metropolitan, I bet you wouldn't even notice him. And she kind of goes and looks back at the mummy or the model, and looks back at me. She goes, "Yeah, you're right. Yeah, just give him some pants instead of a grass skirt, and you'd be looking all right." Anyway, people, totally human, 100%. So that's our third category. So one category is animal. Another category is a mixture of animal and human, which you could probably put Lucy in that too. And the third category is human. And so this mixture of animal and human parts in making it look like it's one, that's just bad science. It's just storytelling. But that's the category we have. And there's no example of a single fossil, not one, where all evolutionists agree we came from this. For every evolutionist that says we came from this, there's another one who says, no, we didn't. Every single one. And so these are our three categories. So now you're all trained up, you're all smarter, you're ready to go. And whenever you see the headline, whether it's Ida, Lucy, or Artie, that's another one, it's an extinct ape. Hey, there's a dead animal, a dead ape. Does that mean Genesis is wrong? No, it just means an ape died. Genesis is right all along. In fact, this actually kind of proves Genesis better, or demonstrates the veracity of Genesis, which says God created creatures to reproduce according to kinds. So if it's an ape, it's going to be an ape. It's going to always be an ape, always has been an ape. And if it's a human, we're going to make more people. By the way, human head and facial varieties go beyond any other animals. So we have tall heads, narrow heads, wide heads, slanted heads, but they're all human heads. And so they're all people, always have been people, and that's exactly what my studies of the fossils have shown. These actually created categories, humans or apes, and there's a big gulf in between. And then we have all these examples of human remains mixed with ape remains. Well, that doesn't challenge the Bible. That just says, wow, we love to tell stories about the past, stories that exclude God on purpose. So there's a spiritual connection to this, and it goes like this. If I evolve from an ape, then I'm not accountable to a creator, because nature is responsible for constructing me, not a God. And if I came about by natural processes, then I can do whatever I want to do. Woohoo! And so what do? We suppress the truth in unrighteousness. So it's not because of the evidence. It's against the evidence. And they're suppressing the evidence that we came from Adam, the evidence that we have that says these fossils are either apes or humans. That's what the evidence shows. But they suppress that evidence and they pretend like there's something in between in order to live unrighteously. So they suppress the evidence in unrighteousness so we can do what we want to do, live the way we want to live, and pretend like there's no God. So it's a spiritual connection. So it's up to us to challenge our friends and neighbors, not bullheadedly, but graciously. Not with, but did you know, blah, 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 and then become a fire hydrant of information that they don't want to hear. But let's challenge our friends and neighbors with the same kind of questions that Kurt asked me that I told you about this morning. Hey, Brian, can you refute this? Asking me a question. So we need to ask our neighbors questions. Our Uncle Bob, everyone's got a crazy Uncle Bob who believes in evolution and I can't believe you Christians are dummies, all that kind of stuff in our own families. And we want to say, well, Uncle Bob, what do you believe? And what led you to that conclusion? Have these conversations. It's too important to not to have. And it's too awesome to know the one who created you, to know him as a friend, know him personally, and to know that he loved you enough to tell you exactly where he came from, exactly where you came from, and that his word is trustworthy, and that the fossils even back it up. So I'm convinced, I'm now persuaded that we came from Adam, not from apes. Science backs it up, and I should have been paying attention to God's word all along. Well, as far as resources go, Contested Bones, it's a little bit of an expensive book, but we have it for you. It's the white cover one. But the other book that has the resources that we have today, by the way, most of these are also available electronically. So if you want an ebook and put it on your reader, you can get any of these on your ebook or other device. You just got to go to store.icr.org and order whatever you want, put it on there. And we have all kinds of other titles other than the few that we brought here today. But Creation Basics and Beyond is a black cover book. CBAB is our nickname for it. And we have about 2 chapters in there that cover these same topics that I just went over today with the ape fossils. But if you have more questions about it, we probably answer those too in Creation Basics and Beyond. For example, what about the DNA? You hear this claim that humans and chimpanzees are genetically identical, like 99% the same. That's another fake fact. Fake news. Fake news. And so you could find out why that's fake news in Creation Basics and Beyond. That talks, and our geneticist, Dr. Jeff Tompkins, he did a full DNA analysis comparison of those. So anyway, those questions are all answered in Creation Basics and Beyond. What about the Ice Age? What about humans in the Ice Age? And there was one, and we lived through it. Our ancestors did. What about Noah's Ark? What are the questions about Noah's Ark and the flood? Those are answered in the book. Did dinosaurs have feathers? We even answered that one. Maybe not. Anyway, it's in the book. Why am I telling you about the book? It's one thing to hear me, and I appreciate you coming for a day, half a day, a Saturday. Very glad you came. But to have a resource on the shelf to which you can return when that question comes up, when Uncle Bob says, you dummies, believe that stuff. You know what? I need to get an answer so I know what kind of questions to ask Uncle Bob. And I got the resource on my shelf. Because you're not going to remember 90% of what I said, unless I talk good, in which we can bump it up to you'll remember 80%. But so get those resources. We want to change lives. This is why we produce these resources, is so that we can have a resource for you to get equipped to be able to answer these questions and point people back to the Lord.
There is one question that I think that you were asked before, and by the way, it's answered in tomorrow's message in Genesis, but I want the doc to answer while he's here, and it has to do with where did Cain get his wife? So if you can.
I think they have me mic'd up still. Are we doing Q&A or?
Yes. A little Q&A.
Okay.
And that's the first question while they get ready.
While they get ready. Yeah, so Genesis 5, I think it's verse 1, says that Adam and Eve had other sons and daughters. And so that's where Cain got his wife, is from one of his sisters. And the reason that was okay back then is because they were, again, genetically pristine. So it was no problem to marry. In fact, you have all that genetic variety in just two people. It's a lot of variation that today is spread out across this room and across this world. But all that most of it, even today, was just in two bodies. And so Adam and Eve could have had a dark-skinned child, a light-skinned child, a medium-toned skin child. And by the way, most people in today's world are medium-toned skin, statistically. And so it wasn't until the law of Moses where we see God saying, okay, tell the people it's no longer any good to marry your brothers and sisters. And so I think God knew that genetically people were starting to accumulate mutations from one generation to the next. You can't get rid of these. They're just like copying errors that build up every generation. So I've got all the mutations that my dad accumulated in his lifetime. They're passed down to me. And I passed down his, plus all of his ancestors back to Adam, plus the new mutations in my germ cells. So it's sperm and egg cells. They're the ones that pass the mutations to the next generation. Anyway, when you marry today, when you marry close relatives, then it brings out all those mutations, and they cause harmful effects. And so, but to mask those harmful effects, we can intermarry distantly related, and that way, if you have a bum gene on chromosome X, the chances are that they'll have a good gene on that position on that chromosome, or whichever chromosome it is. So the chances are that you'll have that the good genes will mask the bad genes, and so as the embryo develops, the baby will use the good genes that are available as it develops, and so that's why we're staving off extinction. But eventually, we will go extinct with the accumulation of mutations. Okay, all right.
And if we can just keep the questions to one or two sentences, and there's only would be room for about three questions. So if you're interested, see Jorge or see Jeff. And perhaps, are you available for a few minutes afterwards? Or?
Yeah, we'll for the hardy question askers, I'll just stay here.
Cool. Okay.
Afterwards.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
When the flood happened, did the fish die?
Yeah, good question. The answer is, well, a lot of fish died. Okay, so but the fish that we have today are the fish that did survive the flood. And so it turns out that most fish and most marine creatures, 95% of marine creatures that God created originally went extinct in those nasty floodwaters. So all the variety of ocean life we have today represent only 5% of that which God originally created. And something like that, something similar to that goes with fish. So the fish that we have today are hardy, tough fish that were able to survive hot water, muddy water, that kind of thing. Yes?
My question is the relevance of 6 24-hour days, and how does that relate to the authority of the gospel?
Yeah, okay. So the gospel is news from God. The gospel is, here's the news. You're a sinner, your sins deserve death, but Christ paid the death penalty for you, and if you trust in him, if you repent of those sins and trust in him, you can be saved. So that's the content, that's the message. Well, the message only has meaning if the words that comprise that message are to be understood in a normal way. Okay? And so if I can say, on the one hand, in Genesis chapter 1, day doesn't mean day, then I can say any word means anything. In fact, I can go and say sin doesn't mean what you want it to mean. I can redefine sin to mean whatever. And then death doesn't mean separation from God. I can make death mean whatever. And then I can redefine any word to mean anything. And so we have to decide, which words in the Bible am I going to not trust And if I'm going to not trust, I better have a really good reason to not trust those words. And so what I'm telling you all day today is that I have looked and looked and looked for reasons to not trust God's word, and I have found no such reason. And instead, I've found every reason that the 6 days were actually days of creation week, and the perspicuity of God's word, the clarity, the understandability, if you will, of God's word. If I can understand what he's saying about creation, then, and I can trust that, then I can definitely trust and understand what he's saying about Jesus in the gospel. So the way that he communicates these different messages to us is the same way. It's using words. And so if I'm allowed to pick and choose what I want the words to mean and which words I want to believe, then I undermine the process of comprehending the gospel and of trusting in the Lord.
Great question, great answer. One more.
Hi. Thank you for that. I think I'm asking a question most people ask. How old is the Earth exactly?
How old is the Earth exactly?
So the best information on the age of the world comes from the Scripture itself. And so you just add up all the chronological indicators, and you get about 6,000 years for the age of the world, right? So those indicators, the chronology data in the Bible go from the first Adam to the last Adam. And so you can add up all the ages using the. Anyway, there's Bible chronologists. One of the best ones is Andrew Steinman, and we're now whittling down the uncertainties to within a plus or minus 50 years of the original age of creation. So we have Bible scholars that are working on that, but all they're doing is they're quibbling over, well, it's one year differences here and there. And so anyway, it's about 6,000 years. Yep, great questions. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.